It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. I recently saw a post from a dear friend of mine, Mike Cottmeyer, over at Leading Agile. And this one really struck a chord with me in a good way. It was talking about how you define success in Agile matters. And I really do think this resonated well with me because I think organizations are really struggling with this. And let's just go through his article. So we'll do a review of his article. I'll post a link to it down in the comments. And I think this is going to give us a good springboard to where we're trying to go. So here we go. He starts off, there's been a divide in the Agile community for a while now. On one side, you have the camp that's all about team-based, iterative, incremental delivery. On the other side, you have the camp that sees Agile as more of a social movement. This side's all about empowering teams, building a culture, or a mindset of agility. Meanwhile, as the debate rages on, a lot of executives and leadership teams we talk to don't even want to talk about Agile at all. It became a dirty word. They tried it and it didn't work. And now they just don't believe in it anymore. So how do we get leadership teams back on board with Agile? I love where this is going because I found the same exact thing, Mike. When I'm talking to leadership teams, a lot of times I bring up, let's do a quick boot camp, or let's do a quick leadership agility focus seminar, or, let's, I've even called it an Agile Leadership Summit. And people are just like, we don't talk about Bruno, right? So I'm hearing the same thing. So with that being said, I also notice a frequency where people are avoiding using Agile or mentioning it in context, especially when you interact with the leadership team. They tend to feel it's very salesy. It's a pitch of something that they've tried and it didn't work. They're treating Agile like a product. A lot of times you'll hear them say, you must avoid using Agile, Expedition, Basecamp, Team Strategy, Summit, and Velocity. Why? Because these concepts have all suffered great misuse. Leadership teams are becoming weary of them. They initially believed in the potential, yet the results were clearly lacking. As Agile professionals, it's our responsibility to bridge the gap between cherished practices, culture, and essential business benefits. The bridge is attainable through structural changes, alignment, and harmonizing intellectual property with business objectives. It involves breaking significant tasks into smaller components, eliminating dependencies, and similar actions. That is what transformation entails. In essence, Agile isn't the main concern. The true focus is on agility. I love this. This might be one of my favorite write-ups so far. And I love that he used a reference to the bridge. This is part of the reason why we use the bridge in AgileDad's logo. In our company logo, we chose to use a bridge because we wanted to bridge the gap between the actual physical work that takes place and the transformation that takes place inside of an organization. So it's a big aha moment, much like in Leading Agile's logo and whatnot. They talk a lot about base camp and mountain climbing and hiking and making it to your destination. And it really does resonate with people when it can make that type of comparison. So he continues that companies don't care about Agile. And he starts off, he says, the key concern is the capacity to introduce products to the market, receive feedback, measure progress, and adapt to the market's needs. He said just a week ago, his team posted something on LinkedIn that gained a lot of attention. And they said they'll include a link later. I'll throw that link in here as well. Essentially, the image conveyed that agility hinges on alignment. Getting team strategies right, synchronizing backlogs, and efficiently producing working software at scale are crucial. Without this alignment, even the best Agile practices and culture won't suffice. Alignment takes precedence. Interestingly, these concepts are closely intertwined. Comments on that post that they made included feedback like, tell me you know nothing about Agile without telling me you know nothing about Agile. I like where that went too. It was fairly interesting to observe the various perspectives that people held. At one point in a response video I posted, I mentioned that if you aren't actively pursuing agility through systems, governance, metrics, and the endeavor to introduce measurable products to the market, then you aren't truly sharing the same context as I am. And I think this goes back to that focus on outcome over output, right? Anyone can crank out output that's pretty pointless, but until you achieve a certain outcome, happy end customers with whatever product or service you're doing, then you're not going to have achieved that end result. The other piece of this has to do with governance and metrics and things that are measurable. And I think that people often put those on a back burner when they think about Agile because it's not the first thing that comes to their mind. There seems to be a divide in the current Agile community. One branch of Agile focuses on team based, incremental, iterative process. This approach centers around optimizing for small batches and hastening market entry. Much of this can be accomplished in a planned and predictable manner. Agree. There are lots of rules and guidelines and things that you can follow that are going to help you get there. That doesn't take rocket science. Then there exists another branch, and this isn't a recent divergence. This distinction has existed for quite some time. This perspective views Agile as a form of social movement, emphasizing the empowerment of teams, enabling teams to make decisions, fostering an environment for development to fulfill their responsibilities and accountabilities. However, the challenge lies in the desire for both perspectives. Drawing from years of experience in this field, um, the belief is that businesses ultimately require the capability to consistently and predictably release software to the market. Agile introduced a fresh metaphor for conceptualizing how to structure systems and teams, determining work allocated to these teams, gauging progress, and executing transformation initiatives that facilitate the formation of Agile teams within organizations. Consider an Agile team composed of 6 to 8 individuals. They possess some autonomy regarding their technical framework. They collaborate with a product owner at the very least. Their backlog is well refined and defined. They deliver functional incremental software at the conclusion of each and every sprint, followed by a feedback loop. Certain conditions must be established within any organization to enable the delivery of such characteristics. Once these conditions are met, methodologies like Scrum or SAFe offer effective approaches to managing tasks, gaining visibility, and tracking progress through burndowns. The presence of teams with minimal interdependencies operating within a degree of autonomy is a key factor. They're operating clearly with the direction of a product owner, but they have a lot of space to be able to make decisions and decide who and how does the work and all that kind of stuff that is a byproduct of the ability to get people into the right ecosystem. And so I think to some degree, right as an Agile key to this one fork of the Agile community, what they've done is they've over indexed on the practices of agility, like daily stand up review and retrospective and burn down, the collaboration techniques, or if at scale, the big room planning and the different techniques associated with that. And, a lot of times that side of the world tends to index on culture and how people feel and are they happy or not with everything that's happening. And again, I feel like a broken record to some degree. That stuff is important, but that stuff is a byproduct of being in an ecosystem that can deliver. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and the reason why I'm kind of hitting on this some form or fashion almost every week of my life, is because there are a lot of places that go on nowadays where people don't want to talk about Agile, right? It's like we're burning that word out of the industry because what people see it as. They see it as a social movement. They see it as a way of empowering people. They see it as a way of trying to change a culture, and everything is great, right? We want it, but only if we can deliver reliably and predictably and get fast feedback. So what I'm really trying to say is that with this article, we have to pay attention to both, or we're going to continue to marginalize ourselves in many of these organizations. This is true. You can't have one without the other. And I think that too many times organizations try to heavy set focus on one and not the other, and they don't have a clear plan for how they're going to implement Agile within the organization, only what things about Agile are right or wrong. And I've seen this over and over where I've invited people at a very simplistic level to revisit what is the purpose behind what we're trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? What problem are we trying to solve? Do we have a North Star? Does everybody understand why we're even trying to do Agile? Is Agile the right solution even, for crying out loud? Sometimes I find that Agile might not be the perfect solution. It may be something better to get the job done. But oftentimes we don't want to talk about it. We treat it like Bruno, right? We don't talk about Bruno. So He goes on to emphasize enabling social movements in Agile, and he says, and so if we want to have empowered people on teams that have local authority to make decisions and to work directly with customers and to get feedback and collaborate and do all the cool stuff we want to do with Agile, we have to create the right ecosystem within those organizations to be able to do that. And so, at the very minimum, at the team level, it is a complete cross functional team. Few, if any, dependencies, backlogs that are clearly articulated, broken up story sized increments where you can actually put something in front of a customer at regular intervals and get feedback from it. And the point we're trying to make here with all this is that that is what enables agility. The practices that we put on top of it and the culture we create are enablers and byproducts of that. Because as you know, we'll tell you candidly, at the end of the day, as a business owner, I care deeply about my people and the work that they're doing for our client. And I want to make sure that our people have a great environment and that they're supported and that they have the ability to operate somewhat autonomously and to make decisions. And we strive really hard to work diligently to be a truly agile organization. But if we don't deliver for our customers, if we don't produce value for our customers, then our customers can't pay us. And when we can't make payroll, and then you end up having to lay people off, and there's just no way to do it unless you're running the business of it. And so this idea that nobody really cares about Agile and all they really care about is agility is what we say. If we don't achieve agility with our Agile right, as defined by the teams that can put things into the market and get fast feedback and inspect and adapt, and to do that, it's relatively reliable and predictable. To do that in a relatively reliable and predictable way, then we don't have a business to run. That is so true. If we don't have a business to run, we can't keep people employed. If we can't keep people employed, we are going to just see everything fall down the pipes, right? So if we don't figure out how to run a business profitably, we're not going to have a culture to dismantle. And if I stand behind this, I stand behind that, and I stand behind what is right. And this is what I'm encouraging the Agile community to think about. Think about if we're aligning the goals as a business. Are we able to help the business be profitable? Are we able to put things on the market in a regular recurring basis and be able to make money from it? Because at the end of the day, if Agile isn't enabling that, then we're not producing software, hardware, systems, products, or services that our companies can sell. Then there's no amount of practice, no amount of culture, and no amount of anything that's going to overcome that. We have a kind of notional idea that if we empower people, if we give them permission to do the right things, that they're going to self-organize and they're going to overcome and they're going to figure it all out. But again, that's not the way it works in a lot of situations. Sometimes there are things that these organizations that are beyond the control of an individual team. So if you can't get some of the systems, architecture, some of the ways that people address business work figured out, if you can't get some of the governance to comply with and to be worked out, you're slugging against an uphill battle that's going to be very, very hard for you to continue. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of us want to operate within our sphere of influence. We understand the practices and we can teach the practices, and we want to encourage people to do the practices. And we want to encourage people to have better attitudes and be more adaptive, and all that stuff is great. But at the end of the day, we keep coming back to it. If that doesn't produce working, tested increments of hardware or software or systems that are tested and validated to be able to be shipped and able to be used by a customer and consumed in an actual company that can charge money for a product and satisfy their customers regularly, none of the rest matters. I'm 100% in line with you, and I feel like we need to do a better job of helping people understand that. So my challenge to all of you is to create that ecosystem first and help people understand why this is so important for businesses to grow. And when you do that, that's when you're going to discover the secret sauce. That's going to do it for today's episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.